Thank you very much. Thank you. It is not hard, while sitting in one's study, to devise admirable plans for the betterment of politics and social conditions. But in practice it too often proves very hard to make any such plan work at all, no matter how imperfectly. Yet the effort must continually be made, under penalty of constant retrogression in our political life. Of course, if you have the pure bridge club mindset, then I cannot expect to appeal to you. If unlimited bridge continued throughout that section of eternity that you enjoy on this earth represents your ideal, then nothing that I can say will in any way shake or alter it, which will be not my fault, but yours. If, however, you have in you the desire for higher things, then I believe that it is possible to make you realize that in the long run, your greatest enjoyment will come from performance of moral duty. And I believe that this marks the way by which, and by which alone, it is possible to realize the truest and highest of happiness. All public achievement rests upon private character. The state cannot go onward and upward. The nation cannot make continued progress unless the average individual is of the right type. Unless the average American is a pretty decent fellow. And unless his wife is still an even more decent fellow, then it will not be possible for the nation to permanently rise. The history of the United States of America is now the central feature in the history of the whole world. For the world has set its face, hopefully, toward our democracy. And, oh, my fellow citizens, each one of you carries on your shoulders not only the burden of doing well for the sake of our own country, but the burden of doing well and seeing that this nation does well for the sake of the history of all humanity. It is of little use for us to pay lip loyalty to the mighty men of the past, unless we sincerely endeavor to apply to the problems of the present precisely the qualities which in other crises enabled the men of that day to meet those crises. Each of us who reads the Gettysburg Address or the second inaugural address of George Washington, who studies the lofty statesmanship of those great heroes, cannot but feel within them that lift toward things higher and nobler, which can never be bestowed by the enjoyment of mere material prosperity. It is not only the country which these men helped to make and to save, which is ours. By inheritance we also inherit all that is best and highest in their characters and in their lives. We inherit from Lincoln and from the might of Lincoln's generation not merely the freedom of those who were once slaves. We inherit also the very fact of freeing them. We inherit the glory and the honor and the wonder of the deed when done. The bells that rang at the passage of the Emancipation Proclamation still ring in Whittier's ode. And as men think over the real nature of the triumph, then scored for humankind, their hearts shall ever throb, as they cannot, over the greatest industrial success, or over any victory, won at less cost than ours. What we need today is a proper appreciation of the relative importance of certain things. We have to war against a tendency to regard in the individual and the nation alike as most important things that are of comparatively very little importance. Today we rightly place high value upon success, but we overvalue a certain kind of success. For we tend to forget that success may be obtained by means which should make it abhorred and despised by every honorable man. One section of the community deifies as smartness the kind of trickery which enables a man without conscience to succeed in the financial and political spheres. Another section of our community deifies violent homicidal lawlessness. If ever our people, as a whole, adopt these views, then we shall have proved that we are unworthy of the heritage that our forefathers left us, and our country will go down to ruin. No man works such an incalculable woe to a free country as he who teaches young men that one of the paths to glory, to renown, to temporal success, lies along the lines of armed resistance to the government or its attempted overthrow. When we begin to see the problems of life as through a glass, darkly, and when the glass is clouded by the murk of furious popular passions, then the vision of even the best and the bravest is dimmed. All the woes that we have seen in France, in the Civil War, in any country, the woes have come from the splitting of two camps, as each is unreasonable as the other. May we avoid the wild extremes that lead down the path to darkness. When we permit the principles of right that have stood for time immemorial to be under review, then we loosen the bonds not only of our own country, but of civilization itself. Life is as if you were traveling a ridge crest. You have the gulf of wickedness on one side, and the gulf of inefficiency on the other. It helps not to avoid one gulf if you fall into the other. It shall help us not if our people are decent and ineffective, nor if they are efficient, but wicked. The practical man is merely rendered more noxious by his practical ability if he employs it wrongly, whether from ignorance or from lack of morality, while the doctrinaire, the man of the theories, whether written or spoken, is useless if he cannot also act. If we ever have to face a state of things where on the one side stands the men of high ideals, but who are utterly unable to put those ideals into shape in practical life, while on the other side stand the powerful and efficient men with no ideals, then the end of our republic will be near. My plea is that the virtuous man, the decent man, shall be a strong man, able to hold his own in any way, because I wish him to be an agent in eradicating the misconception that being decent somehow also means being weak. I wish to see the decent man in any relation of life, especially politics, that when hustled by the man who is not decent, able so to hold his own, so that the other gentleman shall feel no desire to hustle him again. My plea is for the virtue that shall be strong, and shall have a good time being strong. I wish to see it inculcated from the pulpit by every ethical preacher and teacher, and in the home, that just to be decent is not enough. That in addition to being decent, it is the duty of every man to be a strong man, using no words that he is not prepared to back up with deeds. If only we will face our everyday duties in the spirit with which the soldiers of the Union of the Civil War faced their great and exceptional task, all alike, resolute to raise to the highest pitch of honor and usefulness to the nation to which they belong. Never yet was a country worth dying for, unless its sons and daughters thought of life not as something concerned only with the selfish evanescence of the individual, but as a link in the great chain of creation and causation, so that each person is seen in his true relations as an essential part of the whole, whose life must be made to serve the larger and continuing life of the whole. Unless men are willing to fight and to die for great ideals, including love of country and one's fellows, then ideals will vanish, and the world will become one huge sty of materialism. We feel and we know that the doer is always better than the critic, and that the man who strives stands far above the man who stands aloof, whether he thus stands aloof because of pessimism or because of sheer weakness. To borrow a simile from the football field, we believe that men must play fair, but that there must be no shirking, and that success can only come to the player who hits the line hard. So may we hit the line hard in our devotion to moral duty. May we hit the line hard in our devotion to creating a country and a world for future generations of love, goodness, and justice. Thank you very much. Thank you.